Hey, Lead Up Podcast listeners, this is Mike Harbour, your host and publisher of the Lead Up Podcast. You're listening to episode 423. Really excited today. I've got my friend Jeff Drummond's with me today. Jeff is a great partner. He's a great friend. I met Jeff years ago through our affiliation with John Maxwell. We became fast friends. Unfortunately, he's a Alabama Crimson Tide fan, so we give each other a hard time around football season. He's got a lot more to brag about than I do. But Jeff's also a partner with us at Harbour Resources. He works with us as a coach from time to time when we have clients that need extra help. Today, you're going to learn all about emotional intelligence, the emotional quotient assessment. Jeff's an expert in that arena, and he's going to share things with us that we need to know so that we can all get better as leaders. Jeff, welcome to the Lead Up Podcast.
Hey, Mike, I sure appreciate it. I'm glad to be on here with you today. Hey, and you forgot to mention that Alabama is also now a basketball school.
Yeah, unfortunately, Arkansas is neither right now. I've quit watching basketball altogether. We went out and signed supposedly the best college basketball coach in America, in John Calipari, and I've already quit watching because he can't win a ball game, and it's not much fun to be a Razorback. I'm ready for baseball, Jeff.
Yeah, well, y'all are very good at baseball, so
Yeah,
that's one
luckily.
place.
And we got track, man. We're really good at track as well. We win
Yeah.
all the national titles in track. So there's that, right? But hey, man, I'm really excited to talk to you about our topic today, emotional intelligence. I'm a believer that it's the primary predictor of our success in leadership. I talk about that a lot, but why don't you, real quick, just tell the audience a little bit about you and your business, and then just dive right into what is emotional intelligence or the emotional quotient that we're going to dive deeper into today.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Uh, yeah, as you said, my name is Jeff Drummonds, and the name of my business or the name of my company is Drummond's Leadership and Personal Development. And I became my background's in operations, but I became a John Maxwell coach and trainer in 2015. And from there, not only doing leadership training, but got involved in DISC, and which is human behavior and communication. And then, about 4 years ago, I got certified as EQI 2.0, which is the only emotional intelligence assessment that is certified as valid by the American Psychological Association. It's done all the validity testing, all the reality testing. And so, actually, if you go and get certified by me, you can earn credits for SHMR and for American Psychological Association.
So SHMR, Society for Human Resource Management, right? That's what you're talking
Correct.
about?
That's correct.
Yeah, so just, for our lead up listeners, we want to make sure you understand. Jeff not only is a trainer around intelligence using the assessment, also is a certifier. So if you're interested in your business or in your practice, even if you're listening as a coach, you're interested in getting that certification, Jeff can help you get there and coach you how to utilize the tools to be more effective as a leader within your business, or maybe even within your coaching practice. Jeff, maybe many of our listeners here are leaders in different roles and industries throughout the world. Talk to us about, there's probably not many leaders that haven't heard the term emotional intelligence, but tell us what that is. What does that mean? And then what is emotional quotient? How are those two tied together?
Yeah, so it's similar to. I mean, most people are familiar with their IQ or their intellectual quotient, um, which your IQ is fixed. It is what it is. Whereas emotional intelligence is your EQ, which is your emotional quotient, and it's really about measuring your social skills. And with the EQI 360, the EQI 2.0, and the EQI 360 model, it's circular in nature. Each skill plays off of each other. You have five main skills, starting with self-perception. Self-perception, how you see yourself and how you view yourself, which is very important. Um, that leads into self-expression. Now, how do I express myself to others? Which leads into interpersonal relationships, and how I can get along and work with others. And then that leads into decision making, which making good decisions, that leads into stress management. And it's all circular in nature, which goes to, your emotional, social functioning and your well-being and your performance altogether.
When you say you've used the term circular in nature a couple times, what do you mean by that?
Well, if you look at the EQ model, it's like a wheel. Okay. So if you think about the wheel on your vehicle, if it's in balance, you've got a smooth ride, right? But if your wheel gets out of balance, then the ride's not as smooth. It works the same way with your emotional intelligence. When the all five of the skills, which have three sub skills under each one of them, when they're in balance, then your leadership, your interpersonal relations, all those things are going to be a lot smoother ride than if they're not in balance. And let's say you have a skill that you're way out of balance on. For example, I'm a Marine. When I come out of the Marine Corps, my empathy was probably almost non-existent. I had very little empathy because I had just that just do it mentality. But over the years, through coaching and personal development and other things, I've learned that, empathy is a big part of leadership. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So you said earlier that IQ is fixed, but you didn't say whether EQ was fixed or not, but you just kind of described. But let's talk about, I unfortunately, man, if IQ's fixed, I don't know if there's much hope for me, right? I keep thinking I'm trying to get smarter. What do you mean by fixed though? Because I'm a big believer in there's a difference in fixed mindset and growth mindset. I'm a subscriber to Carol Dweck's book Mindset and the philosophy that I can get better. But talk to us a little bit about what you mean, the difference between fixed and not fixed in regards
Oh,
to intelligence or emotional intelligence.
yeah, that's a great question. And what I mean by that is that your intelligence quotient is what it is. Just like Einstein had a certain IQ, I've got a certain IQ, you've got a certain IQ. That's not going to change. Okay. Um, but now your EQ or your emotional intelligence, none of those skills are fixed. They're all, if you score too low in a skill and you want to improve on it, you can improve on it through coaching, personal development, and other different things. Most of the time, when you score low on a EQ skill, it's because you're not using it. It's just because you're simply not using it, and you can develop that through coaching and personal development.
So, talk about the different components of EQ. You've mentioned empathy. What are
Mhm.
the others that make up our emotional intelligence?
Yeah, that's a great question. So each skill has three sub skills. So self-perception is made up of self-regard, self-actualization, and emotional self-awareness. Knowing thyself. Socrates said, know thyself. And so that's understanding yourself and having a good self-perception of who you are. And then that leads into self-expression, which has three sub skills: emotional expression, assertiveness, and independence. Now, those are all really good skills too, from a leadership standpoint or any other standpoint. For that standpoint, um, is that you do know how to assert yourself as a leader, and you also know how to be independent and make decisions when they need to be made. Self-expression leads into interpersonal skills, which is social responsibility, empathy, and interpersonal relations. And so that's really been able to, get along with people, been able to understand them, and be able to try to see things from their point of view when they need you to. And then that leads into decision making, and the three sub skills under decision making are problem solving, reality testing, seeing things as they really are, and not blowing them out of proportion, and then impulse control, not just saying the first thing that comes to your mind, because that could obviously get you in trouble, but actually thinking about it before you speak so that you're saying things in a way that's going to come across to other people. Right there within impulse control, I always coach people on using the three P's, which is to process the information, pick your best choice, and then proceed. don't just go straight into saying the first thing that comes to your mind. But then decision making leads into stress management, which is, flexibility, stress tolerance, and optimism. Being able to face challenges in an optimistic way and in a positive way that's going to help you to reach the best outcome.
Yeah, really good. So, of those, which is the most important for me to develop?
They're all important. There's none of them are any more important than the other ones. Like I said, they all really make you that more rounded person that, you know, not only do you get along better in life and you're able to have good relationships, but you're also a better person to work with if you're in a leadership position. You do a lot of training on quit losing talent. It's also when somebody works for a leader that's highly emotionally intelligent, it's proven that the company has a lot less turnover. They have a good retention rate because the leader knows how to treat people and how to talk to them in a way that is going to help the company and help the person to get to where they want to go.
So talk to us a little bit about how does one go about it. So what I'm hearing you say is intelligence, IQ, the intelligence quotient that we have, it's fixed. We really can't move our emotion or our intelligence quotient, our IQ, but we can move our emotional IQ or our emotional quotient, is what I'm hearing you say. Do I have that correct?
Yes, you're exactly right.
So, how does one go about one knowing what their IQ, their EIQ is right now, and then how does one go about beginning to make a plan to move that or develop it?
Yeah, so your EQ, you learn what your EQ is just by simply taking the EQI 2.0 assessment. Okay. And that's going to give you a feedback. And there's a score. Each one of the skills and sub skills, you get a score. Um, Anything between there again, all this has been tested and validated for years, but anything between a 90 and a 110 is considered average. Okay. If your EQ score is below 90, that's below average. And if it's above 110, that's above average. So it's according to where you fall on that skill. So the ones that, when I coach somebody on their assessment and go through it with them, I always take and go over a couple of their high skills where they're really strong at and a couple of their low skills. And we talk about ways that they can pull those together and put them more in balance, like we talked about the wheel a while ago of being in balance.
Mm. Yeah, really good. So, how does understanding EQ help in professional settings, especially leadership roles? You talked a little bit about maybe reducing turnover, but what are some other ways that me understanding my EQ help me as a person, maybe as a spouse? I can also say, I've related to what you said earlier, Jeff. When you came out of the military, the Marine Corps, I came out of the Army. The military fit really well for me because, you don't necessarily have to have high regard for others' emotions in the military. Now, I'll honestly say some of the best leadership I ever experienced was in the military, right? And I hate to say it, but I've seen some of the worst leadership outside of the military, both in jobs I've had or even leaders that I've worked with. The military gets a bad rap for highly emotionally aware leaders, but that's where I learned, began learning some of that many years ago. But I still had to grow, right? I mean, I left home personally. I left home when I was 18 years old with zero understanding of the things that you're talking about. But how does understanding that? I don't want to share my story. I want to share your experience. How does understanding EQ help leaders, help people, help employees even? We may be talking to somebody, they're not in a leadership role, but they're an employee. Or maybe they're in a parenting situation right now. Or maybe they're a leader that has a leader that has some emotional intelligence challenges. Talk about all those different scenarios and where this may help us.
Well, there again, it can help you in any situation, whether it's, you know, your personal mindset, the way you think, whether it's being a parent, whether it's being a spouse. But if I'm a worker on a team within a business, or if I'm leading a team, in all those areas, all these different aspects play into it, right? Because I learned from emotional intelligence is how to view myself, how to view others, and how to take things in a way that I don't blow them out of proportion because I understand reality testing, and that I'm able to communicate with people in a way that they know that, hey, what do people want to know? They want to know, do you care about me? Can you help me? Can I trust you? And so by having that emotional intelligence aspect of it, you're able to lead people in a way that they know you're for them. That don't mean that sometimes we don't have to have difficult conversations, but it does mean that you know that you can trust me. And if we do have to have a difficult conversations, it's because I know that you can be better.
Yeah, that's good. What might be some feedback I get that would be a reason I might need to consider doing an emotional intelligence assessment?
Well, some feedback that you might get is that, you don't, maybe somebody was to tell you that, hey, you're not seeing things clearly. You're seeing things only through, we tend to see things the way we are, not the way the world is.
Mm,
So, reality testing is, which was one of the sub skills in EQ 2.0, is being able to stop and think about, yeah, let me think about this. Am I really looking at this the right way? Now, what are the other ways that I might look at this and come out with a different conclusion? Um, you know, take assertiveness. Maybe you score really high in assertiveness as from a emotional quotient standpoint. Well, sometimes that score can be just as bad as a low score, right? Because now I'm coming across too strong. I'm too assertive. And so, we work on that also, is trying to recognize that you're really low in empathy, but you're high in assertiveness. So you're coming off strong, and you're coming off people are taking you that you might not really care about them that much. So all of that can be taken into account to work on wherever you want to go to with it, right? Whether it's working on yourself personally, your own personally mindset, or whether it's working on your leadership skills, or even your skills as a husband or a father or a mother.
yeah, I would say, that's probably where I've had to work the most, right? Is balancing out my overly assertive style with my low empathy. I've had to develop, empathy over time and not be not saying I need to remove my assertiveness, but use it in an emotionally a balanced way, right? And I think that's maybe one of the areas I've grown most in my own personal leadership.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, this. How does feedback help someone improve? And can they do it on their own? Like if they just had the report, could they use that information just by themselves to get better?
Yeah, they can. Of course, when you go through the poor report, you're going to need to be, I don't let somebody take the assessment unless I'm going to do a debrief with them, because they're not going to understand what they're looking at. So by me going through it with them, even if we only cover, four of the 15 sub skills, then they're going to know exactly how to go through it and read, what does this sub skill mean? What's the definition of assertiveness? You know, okay, well, what does my score mean? All right. And what are some things that might be showing up in my life or my leadership? And then, what are the implications? What are my internal implications? And what are the external implications for the way I behave in that specific emotional intelligence area? And then we talk about actions that I might take to improve, some things that I might do to improve in it. And then we talk about the balancing of my of each skill with the other skills that it falls in line with.
Yeah, that's good. So, I liken that. I often say this, we have when we have information, so I use a lot of assessments with my customers as well. But, information is power if we know how to use it, right?
That's right.
And we have to, so lead up listeners, what we're talking about here is is making sure when you get information like this that it becomes self-knowledge, not shelf knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Meaning you have someone that is an expert like Jeff to help guide you because we all have a tendency, Jeff, to when we read information about ourselves, we have a tendency to say a couple things. Oh yeah, I know that already. I'm better at that than I used to be. Or, that's not, I don't really believe that information. That's not good. I've seen people do both, right? They don't like what they see in the reports, so they just discard it, right? That's not true. Or, yeah, I've gotten that feedback before and I've worked on that already. Um,
Right.
but if it's still showing up in the report, it's probably still a challenge for us, right? If we haven't developed that. So I just want to make sure our lead up listeners understand that, coaching is a vital component of developing our intelligence. Um, I would even, not to challenge Jeff, but challenge the research. I would challenge people to that I believe IQ can be improved because I know through coaching and mentoring, I've gotten smarter, Jeff, just by hanging around you, I get smarter, right? I don't, and maybe I feel like that's developing my intelligence. I don't know. Maybe it's just my understanding of things. But talk to us about coaching and how you lock arms with someone in a coaching relationship to really help them get the most out of the information that's in the report.
So, yeah, a lot of times what I'll do is, and when I work with several companies that, they, they'll have their employees take the assessment, and every time after we get through with the assessment, we come out with an action plan for things that they can apply. I try to make sure they've got an accountability partner, somebody that they can trust to say that, okay, here's some areas that I want to work on to improve in this area of my emotional intelligence, and I want you to hold me accountable. So, somebody that's a good accountability partner is somebody you can trust. They're not going to talk behind your back, but they're also not going to sugarcoat it. They're going to tell you what's up front. And then, if they don't have a good accountability partner that they feel they can talk to like that, then I offer my coaching services, and then we're able to get on a call once a month and talk through some of the things that they're working on improving, what kind of progress they made, what new action items we might need to develop. Also, with each EQ assessment that I do, I give the client the opportunity to choose a growth graph out of every which area of emotional intelligence they want to work on the most. For example, let's say somebody wants to work on stress tolerance. I give them a growth graph. So it gives them 5 points to work on every week, and then they grade themselves at the end of the week. And they want to see that, growth. They want to see the growth in that. So, for example, I'm looking at stress tolerance right now. One of the points is engage in activity to cope with stress. Use breathing techniques, uh, work on meditation, taking time away from the situation. Another point is to think positive, think about opportunities to learn and grow through difficult circumstances to move forward. Another one is to remain calm, display control of your emotions, thoughts, and behaviors during stressful situations. So they take these 5 points and work on them all week, and then they grade themselves. And by doing that over about a 6 month period, that becomes ingrained into their habits, the way they react to stress. And I have a growth graph for every one of the sub skills, whether it be stress tolerance or assertiveness or empathy or whatever may be the case.
Yeah, probably very helpful tools. I probably need some of those myself. What how can or maybe I shouldn't say how can someone with high emotional intelligence be at a disadvantage in some areas of their life or situations?
Yeah, of course. Like I said earlier, and I'll use that same one. Well, now let me use a different one. Let's say I'm really high in independence. Okay. So now I'm very independent. I'm making decisions. I'm rock and rolling. I'm leaving my team behind. I'm not bringing them along with me. I'm not I'm not getting them involved and being a part of the process, a part of the decision making, so that they don't have any buy-in, and they just see me as out here on a island by myself. So all those play together. so that you do know how, being independent is a good thing. I'm able to make decisions, but I also need to make sure that, I use those interpersonal skills to build relationships and let my team know that, hey, you're a part of this. It's not just me standing out here alone, right?
I feel like you picked independence to pick on me, man. Because
No,
I'm
I
pretty
just
independent, right? As an entrepreneur, I'm and business owner, I'm pretty independent, and so yeah, I could be accused of leaving people behind because I want to move faster than others at times. So again, that's another. Luckily, with the help of coaching and emotional intelligence tools to help me develop in some of those areas, man, I've grown a lot. I know for me. I've had weaknesses in all of those areas. I feel like I'm pretty strong in most of them today, but still have places I need to grow. How do you see the future of emotional intelligence? And I know you've mentioned a couple of, like you've mentioned EQI 2.0 and EQ 360 or something like that. I think you said what's the difference in those two, and where do you see, how do you use, let's talk about that. How do you use each one of those? Are they different? How do you use each one of those, and where do you see those going in the future?
Yeah, so definitely emotional intelligence, just talking about where it's going. If you go out to Indeed right now, and I did yesterday in preparation for our podcast, and you look at leadership jobs over $100,000 in the United States salary, 75% of them are going to have emotional intelligence as part of their job requirements. It might say bachelor's degree, it might say good communication skills, but it's also going to say emotional intelligence is part of it. So just think of how powerful that is that I'm going into an interview and I said, well, yeah, I've taken the EQI 2.0, which is an emotional intelligence assessment. I've worked on some of these areas in my life and, I'm pretty well rounded as a person and as a leader. That's going to come across real well. The but the difference between EQI and EQ 360 is the only difference is that so I take the assessment, okay, then I find peers and maybe somebody that's equal to me, somebody that's a couple people above me, and a couple people below me that are also going to grade me on the same assessment I took. They're going to grade me on the same thing. Then I'm going to be able to compare with a 360 how I view my emotional intelligence versus how other people view my emotional intelligence in those different areas. And what's the gap? And what can I learn from that? And where can I grow the most to make sure that, what I perceive myself as, that other people are seeing me the same way.
So what I'm hearing you say is the EQI 2.0 is a self-assessment. The 360 is me assessing, others assessing me, and comparing the gaps in those
That's right.
to get better, to create a growth plan.
Yeah.
Did I get that
You're
right?
taking the assessment, but they're also assessing you on the same questions.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I also love, Jeff, that you shared, and I think I don't want our listeners to miss this because, almost all of us, unless you're self-employed, you might at one time or another interview for another job or, show interest in another job. And what Jeff's just shared is these things become differentiators between you and another person that may have the same skill set as you, but hasn't done the self-development work that you've done. And so, especially an organization that values that, values someone who takes initiative to be personal, growth oriented and do the work to develop your own skill set around emotional intelligence or, behavioral analysis or whatever that may be, this becomes a differentiator to you as well. So I want to recommend you reach out to Jeff and say, hey, I'd like to learn more about myself and where I can get better in my emotional intelligence because I'm getting ready to look for another job or I'm getting ready to enter the interview process. Jeff would be able to help you with that. Jeff, great information. Love it. I've learned a little bit from you today. I probably need to continue to do some work in some areas just based on what you've shared today as well. How does someone learn more about you, what you offer? Where do they find you? How do they get in touch?
That's pretty simple. If they just go to drummondsleadership.com, one word, DRUMMONDS, leadership.com. They'll come to my website, and then there's a whole area on emotional intelligence. And they go to the drop down menu all the way from taking the assessment to getting coaching in social emotional intelligence, and even to become a practitioner where they can get certified as an EQ practitioner, or just take the assessment and sit through a half-day workshop and learn more from that and other people that are in the workshop, and also do it for individuals and teams.
Yeah, really good. Thanks, Jeff. Lead up listeners, I just want to, remind you here, emotional intelligence, in my opinion, it's 1A of great leadership. I think there's two things we have to get really, really good at as leaders. Number one, 1A is the emotional intelligence, emotional awareness, emotional quotient, whatever you want to call it. And 1B is communication. To be a better communicator, you need to do 1A, right? You got to work on that emotional awareness that you have. I can honestly say, Jeff, it took me a long time to get there. I had a lot of anger issues, assertiveness issues, a lack of empathy, lack of compassion, all of those kind of things that are required in relational leadership. I really had to develop. And so, listeners, if you find yourself struggling in relationships, in your leadership role, or communicating effectively in your leadership role, or working with people that are different than you, I highly recommend you connect with Jeff. Get some coaching around this idea of emotional intelligence to help you grow yourself, to make yourself more valuable to the organization that you currently work with, or more valuable to the organization where you may end up down the road. This has been Mike Harbour and Jeff Drummonds on the Lead Up Podcast. Continue to tune in, share this episode with others. We'll see you on the next episode of the Lead Up Podcast.